Alright guys, we're going to go over the cell, the basic unit of life. So what are the main characteristics of organisms? So in order for it to be considered living, it has to have all of the following things. If it is missing just one, we will not consider it to be a living organism. So all living things must be made of cells, regardless if it is the smallest, most singular unicellular organism or if it is the largest multicellular organism, it is still made of cells. All living things require energy. Energy in the form of food, nutrients of some sort. All living things must be capable of reproducing. If they do not reproduce, they will not form offspring to make their species exist. They must maintain a homeostasis, that balance between the internal and the external of their cell. Without that balance, their cells will not be able to survive. All living things must also be organized. They must respond to the environment. Any slight change in the environment, that cell, that organism has to be able to respond in order to survive. Number 7, they must be able to grow and develop. And then last but not least, there's an exchange of materials with the surroundings. There's a constant exchange between your cell membrane of every cell in your body, between the water as it goes in and out of the cell, waste products, as well as your gas exchange. As you sit there and you breathe in and out, you're exchanging the carbon dioxide and oxygen. So what is a cell and why is it called the basic unit of life? That's what we're going to think about today as we go through this video. The basic unit of life. Well, in 1665, Robert Hooke was the first to identify cells. He said they looked like little rooms in a monk's monastery. So you can see a picture of Robert Hooke, and then next to that is a drawing that he had made of cork. Cork is a plant. It's from a tree. And in this image, what he saw were these little boxes, and those boxes represent individual cells. And the part that you can actually see is the cell wall. But they look like the empty boxes for the most part. Then we have Antoine van Leeuwenhoek. In 1673, so this is after Robert Hooke, he was a Dutch microscope maker. He was the first to view actual living organisms. Robert Hooke observed cork, which was a dead organism because it's from a tree bark. Leeuwenhoek used a sample with his handheld microscope, and you can see his microscope here in the bottom right-hand corner, to view pond water as well as scrapings from his teeth. When you wake up in the morning, that nasty, gross feeling on your teeth, if you take a sample of that and you look at it underneath the microscope, you will see living organisms. So it wasn't long before scientists realized that all living things were made up of cells. This discovery brought about the formulation of the cell theory. The cell theory is very important for you to know. We're going to go through the parts of the cell theory here in a second, as well as the scientists who contributed to creating the cell theory. So the beginning of the cell theory. In 1838, a German botanist named Matthias Sheldon concluded that plants were all made of cells. A botanist is somebody who studies plants. So he was doing all of his research, and he figured out that not only what a cell was, but that plants were made of cells as well. So Sheldon is considered a co-founder of the cell theory. Then we had in 1839 a German zoologist named Theodor Schwann. He concluded that all animals were made of cells. So he is also considered a co-founder of the cell theory. And then not too long after that, in 1855, a German medical doctor named Rudolf Virchow observed under a microscope cells actually dividing. He reasoned that all cells come from other pre-existing cells by cell division. So there are 3 parts to the cell theory. Number 1, all living things are made up of cells. Number 2, cells are the basic units of structure and function in living things. And then number 3, new cells are produced from existing cells. The 3 important scientists who contributed to the cell theory: Matthias Sheldon, Theodor Schwann, and Rudolf Virchow. So let's talk a little bit about cell size and types. So cells, the basic units of organisms, can only be observed under microscopes. The three basic types of cells that we are going to cover in this unit are going to be animal cell, plant cell, and bacteria cell. Then we have our different types or different numbers of cells. Although all living things are made up of cells, some organisms may be unicellular, meaning composed of one cell. Here we have our one singular cell organism. And then we have our multicellular organism, this butterfly and the flower, that are composed of many cells that may organize into tissues. Cells also specialize in certain tasks. So cells in a multicellular organism become specialized by turning different genes on and off. So we call this differentiation. So we may start off as one basic type of stem cell. Well, certain genes in your DNA are going to be turned on or off to say, hey, maybe I need to be a nerve cell. Or that same cell, different genes may be turned on or off and say, okay, maybe I need to be a bone cell. Same cell or a different cell, turn certain genes on and off, and we're going to be now a muscle cell. Or maybe it just stays the same and it's going to be the basic generic cell. Examples of cells in multicellular organisms that specialize, meaning they take on different shapes and functions. So we start off as that basic stem cell, and it may turn into bone, or skin, or nerve, or liver, pancreas. You've got your muscle, your heart, different vessels, your blood, and your kidneys. So we start off as that basic one, we turn certain genes on and off, and that will differentiate. We'll decide that it's going to do something different than all the other cells. So it's going to specialize in just one thing. Specialized animal cells, we have our striated muscle. We call it striated because you can see these tiny little lines in the muscles. This is going to be the muscle that connects to your skeleton. It is voluntary. You can see here's the nucleus of these muscle cells. They contain many nuclei. These would be your biceps, your quads, your hamstrings. Then you have your red blood cells. And last but not least, your cheek cells. Each one of these cheek cells are from the inside of your mouth. You can see here's the cell membrane, and then this dark purple structure is the nucleus of the cell. You got one here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see one here, about 6. Specialized plant cells. We have our guard cells that will open and close to allow that gas exchange with carbon dioxide and oxygen going in and out of the plant. We have xylem. Just like we have veins and capillaries and arteries, plants have something similar, but instead of transporting blood, xylem transports water. And then we have pollen. Pollen is a specialized cell that is used for fertilization. Organization levels of life. We've talked about this before, from atoms to organisms. So our non-living levels, atoms. Atoms will build elements. Then we have our molecule, compounds like carbohydrates and proteins. Molecules build organelles, which is our nucleus, our endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi apparatus. Those are our 3 non-living levels. Our living levels, smallest unit is our cell, which makes up all organisms. Cells that work together make up your tissue. Tissues that work together make up your organs, such as your heart, your brain, and your stomach. Then we have our organ systems. They're your respiratory, circulatory, nervous, endocrine, reproductive. And then your organ systems will finally make up the organism. We are going to stop there today. We'll continue on with the next video where we talk about simple or complex cells going into prokaryotic versus eukaryotic.